Yes, thank you very much for inviting me on this interview. My name is Christopher da Costa. I'm a subject matter expert at an organization known as the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, otherwise known as CEPI. Essentially, I'm a subject matter expert on vaccine development, and I lead a disease program for coronavirus vaccines that includes the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS. I've also worked on several other vaccines in the past, including Lassa fever and Nipah virus, and also worked on other aspects of interest to CEPI, such as its monoclonal antibody program and its adjuvant program. Essentially, the work we do at CEPI is geared at equitable access to vaccines and other countermeasures in low and middle income countries to ensure that there is equity.
Talk to us a little bit about what the vaccine production status for the continent of Africa is like right now.
Mantra at the moment is that 1% or so of the vaccine requirement for Africa is fulfilled by local supply from Africa, and the rest of it is from outside Africa. The aspiration is that 60% of that supply by 2030 will be produced locally within Africa, and that's a very lofty goal. There is so much more than the aspirational target that goes to making this come to fruition. So there's a lot going on at the moment to have a lot of collaboration between local organizations within Africa and various public-private partnerships outside of Africa, the Global North helping the Global South, not just Africa. This is the subject of a lot of policy declarations that have yet to be translated into practical activities. And so, yes, it's a very aspirational goal to have self-sufficiency for vaccine production in Africa, but one that has many challenges that hopefully we have some time to talk about.
So when you think about your role at CEPI and the work that you're doing, what is it that you're excited about in the work that you're doing when you look into the future of vaccines around the world, or specifically for the continent?
What excites me is that there is now much conversation and a move to actually translate this to action for making vaccines accessible to many more people in Africa, not just during times of outbreaks, but for routine use to prevent these diseases in the first place. This has been a long time coming. We certainly have had vaccination programs in Africa that have been supported by organizations outside of the continent that have been the research and development, clinical trials, the manufacturing regulatory authorities that have approved vaccines to be used in Africa. But we certainly need to bring home some of these activities in a way that's sustainable, in a way that has buy-in from the key stakeholders, most importantly the patients or the subjects who will receive these vaccines, either in an outbreak or for routine use. So the time is now, and we certainly have a lot of activity that's ongoing to that effect.
What is it that you think needs to be done? What is it that we're kind of still missing?
So I think a lot revolves around the fact that Africa is a continent of many countries. There are over 50 countries in Africa, and they're spread over a very wide geographical area. These countries have their different cultures, different languages, and certainly politically, there are so many different entities politically, each one for each country. And it's very important to have a system that ensures a rational use of resources and also introduction of resources on the continent that would be of value to all countries. So having regional hubs in different parts of the continent seems to be one potential avenue in which it avoids duplication of effort in different parts of the continent. Having a particular, for example, set of vaccines produced by a manufacturing facility, for example, in West Africa, that complements what's produced by another facility, large-scale manufacturing facility, on the east side of Africa, and are different from the one in the south, one in central, and one in north, just for the sake of argument. So they complement each other. They also potentially open the avenue for having a common market such that each one of these facilities doesn't fall short in terms of demand, because there has to be demand for these products if they're being produced at large scale, such that the facilities in of themselves are viable economically. So collaboration, certainly on the market access side, collaboration also in terms of financing for these various entities and financing for procurement of vaccines. That is a big area that so far has been taken on by Gavi, in particular, an organization known as Gavi, and with the help of WHO, pre-qualifying vaccines in terms of their safety, efficacy, and quality to be ready to be procured by Gavi and subsequently supplied to Africa. But there is an issue with that. The issue is that Gavi mainly procures vaccines that are very expensive for multinational corporations or MNCs for the majority of vaccines. And therefore, there is a limit to how much can be supplied for widespread use in Africa. Now, the new model really has to look at new ways of financing that really has tiered levels of sourcing of vaccines that are more favorable to low and middle income countries. In other words, translate that to cheaper sources of vaccines, but yet of high quality safety and efficacy. So a lot of thought needs to be put into procurement in addition to access to markets. That's just one piece of the puzzle. And we can talk more about others.
Right.
Yeah.
I won't belabor you too much longer. I have two more questions.
Yes.
If you would humor me.
Yes. Yes.
If you would humor me.
Yes.
I know I'm glad you talked about collaboration, access to markets, and like moving things around in terms of being able to connect with each other, right? In light of that, how do you see the AFCFTA, the Africa Free Trade Area Agreement, playing a role, or either positively or hindrance, to this aspiration of Africa's vaccine production?
Yes, I think that organization is precisely the kind of organization that should be leveraged to facilitate free trade across the continent when it comes to vaccines and market access, by allowing import and export without significant restrictions from one hub to outside its catchment area to other parts, that opens up the market access, opens up the demand equation for those vaccines in that hub, and therefore increases the likelihood of viability in the long term of that facility. So that organization could certainly play a role by interlinking governments from different parts of the continent to work together towards an open market. I think that's a critical role that would be played in this sort of situation.
I mean, you've done this work for years now. Why did you come into this field? What was it that
Yes.
led you into coming into working in the public health space, but then also the vaccine space? And what would be your advice to those who are coming behind you, who are
Yes.
interested, especially on working on vaccines in the African continent?
So I always used to ask myself the question, I am a practicing clinician, but what is it that I feel is missing? And it was always a question of what impact can I have beyond what I call the revolving door? I had this analogy of a sink that's filling up because the plug is in and the tap has been left on, and it's overflowing and the water's falling on the floor. And someone is using a mop and constantly mopping up the water, but that water continues to fill up the floor, fill up the room. And the way to resolve that problem is to turn off the tap. And I draw that analogy to, revolving door of clinical practice versus public health. How can I have a bigger impact by turning off the tap? And that's how I came into gravitating towards public health. It helped that I was working in the field of infectious diseases, which of course lends itself most in terms of specialty in medicine to public health, arguably. And I sort of found that by having an impact in developing vaccines or helping to develop vaccines, I could have a much greater global imprint in the work that I do. And that's what brought me into the field, ultimately. My advice to those that are coming into the field is to be very circumspect about what your goals are in coming into public health. You need buy-in into the concept of a global imprint in what you are doing. It doesn't mean you have to walk away from clinical practice where you can, but realizing that you can have a bigger impact means doing things in a different way, thinking in a different way, thinking proactively about how you can prevent rather than necessarily treat diseases. And that mindset is very important coming into this kind of work.
Dr. Costa, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.